Daf Vav Amud Aleph. Sorry for the technical delay. Be'ezras Hashem, finishing up at the very bottom of Daf Hey Amud Beis, where the Gemara had discussed with us the question of achrayus, of ownership of responsibility of chametz, with regards to the question of whether or not we held of the shita that says davar hagarim lemammon kemammon dami, and the Gemara told us hanich leman da amar, that the question of the isur bal yirai bal yimatze applying to some kind of produce that was left in Jewish homes for the army of the king to show up and say, I want you to make me some food. Rava had told the people of Mechoza, Be'ir chamira dibnei chaylem v'atechu, you have to destroy the chametz of those soldiers that are in your houses, because if something happens to it, you're on the hook for it, and therefore it is something that it would violate the Isra of Bal Yirah Bal Yimatze, because you have achrayus, you have responsibility over it. It says the Gemara, that makes sense if you think, if you're of the ilk that of the persuasion in halacha that says that something which causes a monetary effect is as if it is money. So ela leman da'amar la'av kemam, but why exactly would you be chayiv to get rid of that chametz if you don't think it's like mammon? So we say no, shani hachad amar lo yimatze. No, yeah, it's different because the pasuk specifically says lo yimatze, it shouldn't be found with you. But does that mean that Rava is of the opinion that davar hagarim lemammon kemammon dami? Says the Gemara, no. You could spin it the other way around. Ikeda amri, there are those that say hanich leman da'amar davar hagarim lemammon la'av kemammon dami. That makes all good sense for somebody that holds davar hagarim lemammon kemammon dami, la'av kemammon dami, that something that causes a monetary effect is not like money. Hainu de'itzrich lo yimatze. That's why the Torah has to tell you that there's a prohibition called lo yimatze. That's the chiddush of the Torah. Lo yimatze, it shouldn't be found with you, even though in all normative circumstances, this is not considered a davar kemammon dami. The chiddush of the Torah is telling you that it is kemammon dami in the case of chametz and Pesach. But if you don't believe that davar hagarim lemammon is not like mammon, you think that it is like mammon, so then why would the Torah need to tell you lo yimatze? Meaning now the Torah is just telling you something extraneous. Why do you even need the pasuk at all? So you say, no, you do need it. I would have said, this is a very technical answer here. Means when you give it to him, 100%, nothing bad happened to it. When you gave it to the guy, then it's not in your possession. Meaning it turns out that it was never in your possession, because it's only in your possession if and only if the non-Jew comes and claims it on Pesach and it isn't there, and therefore you have to pay him for it. But if he shows up and says, hey, I want my stuff, and he takes it, so then it was never yours. Kamash malan, and therefore what Rava is teaching us, or that what the pasuk is teaching us of lo yimatze, is even if you hold that it is kemammon dami, in this case you'd have a good reason to think that it's lav kemammon dami, and you would still be in violation of bal yirah bal yimatze. Along a similar line, the Gemara now tells us of a question that they asked Rava. Bar minei me Rava, they asked the following question of Rava: Behemas arnoina chayevas b'bchara. Is the animal that comes from a taxable herd, is that going to be bechora? Meaning that there's a certain amount of animals that a person has in the herd. Every 10th animal you need to give as a as meiser, and that's not our case here. But the firstborn of every flock, that would be the question of bechor. The din of Bechara is that a Bechara is only chayev if it is fully owned by a Jew, similar to the halacha of Tvilas Kelim. If you tovel kli, you only are chayev to tovel kli if it is fully owned by a Jew. This is the heter that the caterers use often to get around issues of buying and selling tremendous amounts of flatware or cookware, whatever the case is. If it's co-owned by a non-Jew, it's not chayev in Bechara. So behemoths are nona, this taxable animal. You have a herd of animals that they come and they claim from. So is that chayeves b'Bechara or ein chayeves b'Bechara? Is that liable? Is that obligated in Bechara or not? Meaning, is it co-owned by a non-Jew? Says the Gemara, as long as you could bump the tax collector, send him on his merry way by paying him cash, lav kamibayele, the chayev. Obviously, then you're still chayev in Bechara. Meaning, that's just a monetary obligation that he happens to sometimes claim from your animals. But the animal is 100% totally in the ownership of a Jew. It is simply a question of maybe he's going to come and take it. But there's no animal that he owns. He comes in and he takes money. You have a monetary obligation. Where we have the question is where you can't get rid of him with money. Meaning, he wants the animal. He's coming to claim the animal. What's the halach in that case? Amalahu, so he said to them, Petura, he is exempt. But didn't we learn in a Brisa Chayeves that he is Chayev? Says Ravana, Hasam de Matzi Masalakle. Now, that is only Chayeves that is Chayev. So he says, no, Hasam there. The Matzi Masalakle, where you could have gotten rid of him with the money of paying off with money instead of giving him the animal, that's where he's going to be chayaves. Meaning, they asked him the question in the wrong order. So Ikda Amri, and there are those that say, no, Amar Rava, something much more chomer, much more charif than what Rava had said. Amar Rava, behemas arnona petura min b'chara. A behema of an arnona is always patur from an arnona. Meaning, what does it mean that there's that Rava had said behemas arnona is patur? Means always. The af al gav dematzi mesalakle. It could even be in a case where you could pay him off with money, meaning where there's some monetary obligation. Even in that case where he doesn't seem to own the animal, so af al gav dematzi mesalakle. Even in that case, you'd be chayev. You patur from bechara. Where are you chayev? In a case of isas arnona, with the dough of the arnona, meaning taxable dough. So it's hard to imagine the metzius of it, but apparently that whenever anybody would make dough, there'd be some piece of it that was taken away and given to the arnona to give to the soldiers, to give to the workers, whatever the case is. The isa that is taxable, the dough that is taxable, chayeves b'chala, is still chayev in chala. Va'af al gav de loy matzim mesalakle, even if you cannot pay him off with it. Meaning, even if you could say, here's $20, leave me alone, don't take away my bread. And he says, I want the dough. That's what we are going to be using. My time, and what is the rationale behind this? So we say, behema is la kala, isa is leisa kala. With regards to an animal, everybody knows whose animal this belongs to. Behema has a kol, means that there's this word on the street is whose animal this is. Isa leisla kala. When it comes to dough, nobody knows whose dough this was. Dough looks like dough no matter what. It's not distinguishable from other dough. What's interesting is that between these two explanations of Rava, it seems to be that we have gone from discussing the din d'oraisa to a different din, to some kind of din d'rabbanan. The first discussion, which was whether or not you chayev in bechora, depending on whether or not you could dematzi masalek lebezuzeh, whether or not you could pay him with money, seems to be a discussion in the din d'oraisa, meaning that you're chayev in bechor unless it is co-owned with a non-Jew. If it's co-owned with a non-Jew, then you are not going to be chayiv in this animal. And that's what Rava was talking about. But the second discussion seems to be that fundamentally you are going to be parted from this, meaning any time that he has any involvement in your bechara, in your animal, you're parter. And likewise, with regards to the Issa Sarnona, since there's any involvement in it, you're going to be parter. However, there's a chumah midrabanan. The Rabbanan insisted that when it came to Issa, you are going to still be chayiv, and that is because of some kind of maris ayin, because people are not going to know that they're not going to know whose bread this belongs to. When it comes to the behemoth, nobody's going to start thinking that you got away with bechara if they see that the animal was taken away. So then they know that you are that you should never have been chayiv in bechara. Meaning, once they've taken it, there's meaning obviously it is this. That's the halacha. Even if you could have paid him off, once he takes it, it's this. It belongs to the non-Jew. So behema is lakala. Rav is telling you that you don't need to do bechara on an animal that you end up losing. If you kept it, yeah, then you should. But once you've lost it, there's no chumah d'Rabbanan because everybody knows that you didn't avoid the halacha of bechara. But with regards to Isa, leis lakala, nobody's going to know that a guy took a piece of it. So when you're eating your challah, your bread, and a piece of it was taken by a non-Jew, so there's no kol in that. People are just going to look at a Jew and say he's not taking challah from his dad. Meaning, and it's worth just pointing out that oftentimes in the days of Chazal, everybody would come and they would bake their bread together in big ovens. You prepare the dough at home, then you would come, you'd take off challah, and then you'd put it in the oven. So the Jew that's not taking off challah fairly public about this. Nevertheless, says the Gemara as follows: Tana Rabbanan, Goy shenichnas lechatzer shel Yisrael u'v'tzeik b'yado. You have a guy that goes into the this question comes up all the time. Halacha l'maisa. This next one. Goy shenichnas lechatzer shel Yisrael u'v'tzeik b'yado. You have a non-Jew that goes into the chatzar of a Jew, and he is carrying his sandwich with him. Right? He's got his betzig, his dough with him. We're talking about obviously on Pesach. Ein zok levar. You don't need to get rid of him. You don't need to say get out of my house. Meaning that's not an Isser Bal Yerabal you want. Say it might be a good idea to say to him, you mind finishing this, in the backyard so we don't end up with crumbs. But there's no Isser of letting him into your house with his bread. If Kido Etzlai, if the non-Jew says to him, hey, I got to go speak to, you have a contractor. He said this, we'll talk about him in Sis, I could possibly have him as man. The contractor comes into your house and he's holding onto his sandwich. And he wants to schmooze to you about something, and you're really uncomfortable. He's got his crumbs there, and you said to him, let's go talk about this outside. And then all of a sudden, there's a pipe burst behind him. So he says, "Hold this. I'll come back for this a little bit later. I got to go deal with that." So you know that you got to make sure that that he gets his sandwich back. So zakelevar. Now that you're responsible for the sandwich, now you have to get rid of it. So yichele bayis. But if you gave him a room in your house, ein zakelevar, you don't need to get rid of the chametz that is in that room. Shenemar lo yimatze, because the pasuk says lo yimatze, it shouldn't be found. Now the Gemara wants to ask the question. Hold on a second. What does this lo yimatze come to teach us? We have a number of halachas in this brisa. Ma'ika Amar, what does that mean? Lo yimatze Amar, Papa says, Areisha, it's going on the first din of the brisa of Gosh Nichlas Shel Yisrael. Ein Zak Levar. It's going on the Reisha. The Hachi Kamar. And this is what the brisa is telling us. If Kido Etzloi Zak Levar. But if he leaves it with you, then you do need to get rid of it. Shinemar, the pasuk says, Lo yimatze. It should not be found. Meaning, the moment that you are in some kind of possession of it, that you're responsible for it, you have now violated lo yimatze, you have to get rid of it. Rav Rashi says, no, that the pasuk is coming to support the end of the brisa. This is what we are talking about. If you gave him a house, meaning you gave him a room in your house. That's what a bayis is. Like a bayis is chayv mezuzah, means a room is chayv mezuzah. If you gave him a room in your house, ein zak levar, you do not need to get rid of the chametz that is in that room. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, lo yimatzei b'vatechem, it should not be found in your homes. V'hai lav didehu, and now this is no longer your home because you have let the non-Jew, you have a lease agreement with the non-Jew, and he says that he's going to be staying in that room, he's going to be staying in that space. Lav didehu doesn't belong to you anymore. So it says the guy ki kamal levese dinashe kamal, because when the guy goes into the house, he's going into his house, he's not going into your house. Now, practically speaking, this is an essential part of the sale of chametz form. When you sell chametz to the nachri, what you do is you say on the form, I'm selling you the chametz and the space that it is in. Because if you sell the chametz without selling the space that it's in, without leasing him the space that it's in, then you have the first problem. You have the guy that has chametz in your house that you're now responsible for. Meaning you sold it to him, the sale is a good sale, but you're still in violation of Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzeh, because now you have the chametz of the guy that's in your house that you're responsible for. And therefore you need to lease him the house, the space that the chametz is in. Without that, you're still in violation of Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzeh, not for ownership, but for the responsibility of the chametz that belongs to the nachri. But now the Gemara is going to ask a follow-up question in Choshen Mishpat. Hold up a second. Lemeimer de Schiris Kanya? Does that mean that when you have a lease agreement with somebody, that they are koine that it actually belongs to them? Meaning, what would we have said is not that they own that space, but now that they have the rights of usage of that space. Now it sounds like they actually own it because it's no longer your bias. I mean, that could have serious ramifications. The word of Choshen Mishpat. Do we not have a price? Even in places where we said that it is mutter, that it's permissible to be maskir, to rent out space to a non-Jew. They never said, Chacham never said that it's permissible to let a non-Jew live in those spaces. What's the concern? Because it's going to bring Avodah Zarah into that place. I mean, if you're living in a space, Eretz Yisrael in the days of the Tanaim, or earlier, where there's rampant Avodah Zarah, so you can rent certain space, and we'll talk about what that space is, where in the world that is. There's certain places that you can rent out space to a non-Jew, but you're not allowed to rent out a place for him to live in, only to use for like other stuff. And if you would think that when you rent something out, it belongs to him entirely, when he's going in, he's going into his own home. Meaning, what difference does it make if he's going to bring in Avodah Zarah or not? That's his problem. It's not your problem. It's not your problem. It's not going to be Avodah Zarah that is in your house. Now, Rashi here points out that what exactly are we talking about? Rashi tells us here, it's an important din. It says in the first paragraph of Avodah Zarah, you are never allowed to rent out a home to a nachri in Eretz Yisrael. But in Syria, which the Gemara at the beginning of Gittin tells us was a kibush yachid. David HaMelech conquered Syria all by himself, and therefore in Syria it was a quasi Eretz Yisrael. You were allowed to rent out homes to him. Because in Chutz La'aretz you're allowed to rent out homes to non-Jews. Meaning in Chutz La'aretz you don't have the obligation of getting rid of the Avodah Zarah from it. But how could you rent out a place to a nachri in Eretz Yisrael that has that he's going to come and bring Avodah Zarah into? You are then giving a space to Avodah Zarah in your home. I mean, now there's Avodah Zarah in your house. But if Schiris Kanya, then it's Avodah Zarah in his house. What difference does it make? So we say, Shani Hachanara, here it's different. The Afkir Rachmana B'Lashon Lo Yimatze. With Chametz, it's very different. It's not a question of Schiris or not Schiris, or ownership or not ownership. It's simply a question of Lo Yimatze. Mishe Matze Biyadcha. This is talking about something that is found in your hand. It's not a question of whether or not you own the space. It's just a question of accessibility. If you have rented out the space to him, then even if it's a usage agreement, you don't have usage of that space, and therefore you cannot be in violation of lo yimatze, of bal yimatze, the issur of having it being found there with you, because it is not a question of who owns the space, it is a question of who uses the space. So this doesn't get into the question of schirus kanya. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, says Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, Hamoitzi chametz b'Yom Tov, somebody that finds chametz in the house on Yom Tov. This happens from time to time. I've got an ishalis. What do you do? So the first thing to know is that it's muktzah. You can't move it now because chametz and Pesach has zero usage. It is 100% muktzah. So what do? Kaifa alav esakli. You have to cover it. You have to cover it with a kli. Amar Rava says im shel hekdeshu. But if it is hekdesh, if it belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, eino tzarich. You don't need to cover it up. Why? My timer. Mivdal b'dilimine. People know not to come in contact with it. Meaning, in everybody's home, there was like a basket of hekdesh. This belongs to the Kohen. This belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. Whatever it is, nobody's coming in contact with that. Everybody knows. Stay far away from that. Don't even touch it. Don't make it tummy. This is Midal b'dilimine. Everybody is going to stay far away from this, and therefore you don't need to cover it with a kli. V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, Chemsa shel Gai, with regards to the chametz of an achri. You have to put a wall up. You put a wall that's at least 10 tvachim mishum heker, so that people can see that this chametz belongs to a non-Jew. But if it belongs to hekdesh in a tzarech, then you don't need to put it there. Well, why? My timer mivdil b'dili anshimine. Everybody knows to stay far away from. That's the reason that you don't need to put up the wall as a heker. The wall, obviously, at 10 tvachim. That's 12 inches, whatever the case is. So that in such a circumstance, the wall isn't going to prevent anybody from getting to it. It is a heker. It is simply there as a mechitza. Some, you barricade it off with, some tables around it. Say, don't touch this. That's not necessary when it comes to hekdesh because everybody knows to stay far away from it. V'amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav says, Rav Yehuda in the name of Rabba, v'mafarish v'yetz b'shayra kadim shloshim yom. This is super duper halacha l'maisa, comes up all the time. Somebody that is going on a boat or is going on a caravan, kadim shloshim yom, 30 days, or before 30 days before Pesach, Ein Zok Levar, does not need to get rid of their chametz. Tarish Shloshim Yom, within 30 days, Zok Levar, he does need to get rid of his chametz. Now, this is a very, very bizarre statement of Rav Yehuda. You're going far away. You don't need to get rid of your chametz. Hold on. Does that mean you're allowed to own the chametz on Pesach? That doesn't make any sense. Says the Gemara, quoting from Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, that Ein Zok Levar, you don't need to get rid of it. Now, we know that the halacha is Ein Zok Lebedikas chametz. You don't need to go searching for the chametz. And this is the discussion here. So the Marashah here points out, and he quotes this from the Ran, the Marashah points out that what we are talking about here is Ein Zok Levar means the Chachamim never insisted that you have to do bedika and you have to do bir, because you could do bittul, meaning the original de'araisa halacha of bittul ba'al masagi, like we saw in the Tosfos in the first Amud of the Maseches, bittul ba'al masagi, that all that you would need to do is say, I don't own this anymore. You can be mevatel it. So if you're not going to be home for Pesach, we'll see that this is the halacha. If you left 30 days before and you're not going to be home for Pesach, so then Ein Zok Levar, the Chacham didn't insist that you come back to find the Chacham. You're not going to see it. You could be mevatel it. Now, we should also point out that this is talking about a situation where most people didn't have, fridges stocked with chametz. Nobody was planning on using chametz afterwards. If you haven't been home for 6 months, you assume that there's zero chametz in your house. So, Ein Zok Levar, you don't have to come back and check it. You could just be mevatel. That's the case that we're talking about here. So, 30 days before Pesach, you don't need to worry about doing b'dika and beer. Within 30 days, Zok Levar, then you do need to check it. You do need to burn it, even if you are leaving for Pesach. Amar Abaya, and we'll see that the din of whether you're coming back or not. Amar Abaya says, Abaya, hi, that which Rav said is within 30 days, Zok Levar, you're still going to need to get rid of it. Loi Amram, we didn't say Ela Shedata Lachsar, that means that you have intention of coming back for Pesach. But if you have no intention of coming back for Pesach, then you don't need to get rid of it, even within 30 days. Rava says to him, and if your intention is to come back for Pesach, then you should make sure to check, even if you left before Rosh Hashanah, you're going to come back to the house, there might be a crumb. You have to make sure, gazais of chametz, or somewhere or another, you would need to check even if it's before Rosh Hashanah. Rava tells us, if you left more than 30 days before Pesach, you don't need to do bedika, you don't need to do beer. So that's talking about a situation where you have no intention of coming back for Pesach. Meaning, you locked up your apartment in Eretz Yisrael 2 weeks after Pesach, and now you're coming back. The next time that you're planning on going back there is going to be for Pesach next year. Says Rava, in that case, you would need to check before you came back to America. You would have to check 2 weeks after Pesach. You're about to come back to America. You know that nobody's going to be using the apartment in the interim. So you have to do bedikas chametz then, and bir chametz then. You have to make sure that there's no chametz in your house. All of the extra, the pizza that you bought Matzah Pesach, you have to get rid of all of it. Make sure that you do bedika there, and beer there, because you know that you're coming back Cholamoid Pesach next year. That's when you're coming back to that apartment. Even if you would need to check even before Rosh Hashanah. But if it's more than 30 days before, and you're not planning on coming back for Pesach, you're not going to show up there in the middle of Cholamoid. That's when the Chacham said you don't need to do bedika, you don't need to do bitul. And Rabbi goes according to his rationale. The Amar Rabbi said, if you made your home, you took a room and you turned it into a storehouse for grain, 30 days before Pesach, you don't need to do bedika and beer. But within 30 days, you do need to do bedika and beer. What's the question of turning it into a storehouse of grain? Is the bottom grain is going to turn into chametz, but you're not going to get there. Meaning, within 30 days, then you're not coming back. You're not getting to the bottom of it. If there's a little bit of chametz at the bottom, you're never going to see that on Pesach. You're never going to end up using it on Pesach. Nobody's going into that on Pesach. So you can be mevatel that. You don't need to go digging out the whole thing. Kodim shloishim nami. So before 30 days also. So we say loy amran ela she'en da'ata lefanosa. No, but that's only talking about if you didn't have any intention of emptying it out. Aval da'ata lefanosa. But if you did have the intention of emptying it out beforehand, so I feel kodim shloishim, even if it is within, even if it's more than 30 days, nami zak levar. You would also need to be mevayer it. Meaning, you're planning 2 weeks before Pesach on emptying out your granary, so then you are chayiv in bedika, you are chayiv in beer, even if you turned it into a granary 30 days before. Now there's a big pile of grain on top of it. If you're planning on getting to the bottom, then you are going to be seeing that chametz, and that chametz is going to be accessible to you. And bittul wouldn't help you there, because maybe either we're concerned of bal yirah or bal yimatzeh, that you're going to see some chametz and say, "Ooh, I like that chametz," and now you are chayiv in bal yirah or bal yimatzeh, or you are going to say, "Wow, I'd love to eat some of that," and now you're going to end up eating it, and then you'd be chayiv the chiyuv of kares. So the Gemara tomorrow, we'll pick up from the bottom of Vav Amud Aleph, asking the question of what is the rationale behind 30 days being the operative number, and to be continued. Have a wonderful day.